It is the Everton Byline, episode 4, a sort of new podcast now, I think we can say, hosted by the Blue Room, with me, the host of the Blue Room, Matt Jones, an editor at the Liverpool Echo, and, of course, Patrick Boylan from The Athletic. Paddy, how are you?
I'm all right, yeah. I think we were just saying before we started recording that we've only got probably about 24 hours now, just over 24 hours left of the summer transfer window, and that feels good. It'll feel probably even a lot better once we get over the line. What is it? An 11 o'clock deadline on Friday. That in reality for journalists is a 1 a.m. Saturday deadline, because you've got 2 hours, of course, for deal sheets and to see how they've gone. So yeah, glad to be close to dispensing with this for another couple of months, and I guess then we can actually all go on to talk about football again. Which
well,
is what we're
maybe not with Everton. It's never quite the case with Everton, is it? There's something will happen that means that we're not talking about the actual football.
I mean, we have had probably 2 or 3 years of constant off-field stuff, haven't we? From takeover speculation to points deductions and everything else. So you are. I'm sure you're right. I'm sure there'll be something else for us to get our teeth into. It's very one thing you can say about Everton is it as dull as it can be on the pitch at times. It's very rarely dull off it.
Yeah, and I expect that'll be the case tomorrow. So as we're recording this on Thursday evening, and I think while we don't like to date podcasts usually, probably sensible we do that given the speed at which things move at this time of year. So if you listen to this, say on Friday morning, who knows if anything we say will still be relevant. But I'm not just going to talk about transfers that Everton may or may not do, Paddy. We're going to look at that towards the end of what's going to be a little bit of a shorter show today. But we sort of wanted to get on and sort of get out of the routine of the podcast coming out every Tuesday morning, just to talk about transfer deadline a little bit, because we said it's something we wanted to do, and it didn't really quite fall correctly with the games this week and with the show going out on Tuesday. So just wanted to sort of give people a bit of an insight into what our respective days look like, really, because as you sort of alluded to there, it is very tiring. And I'm sure people listening to this won't have much sympathy for sports journalists at all. But some people out there do. Some of the feedback we've had has been people liking to get these little bits of insight. So, I mean, just come to yourself first. Obviously, it's going to be extremely busy, isn't it? And it's not just the process that can be covered by a 9 to 5 usual shift where you get off on Friday and you get to the pub as you know, people like to do. And certainly at this time of year, it's going to be a bit of a hectic day. So what is your day shaping up to look like tomorrow as it stands?
Yeah, so obviously it's heavily dependent on what the clubs are or aren't doing, and certainly if any club throws in a late curveball and you're on covering them, then that's a task in itself. The one big difference to a regular day is that obviously the hours are a lot longer on deadline. I mean, I basically normally clock on more or less as soon as I wake up, check the phone, check messages, see what's been going on overnight, because you need to sleep at some point, right?
Is that you clocking on, reading Twitter in bed of a morning?
I just it's reading the papers, it's reading what's online, it's reading social media, it's checking into our company internal communications platform to see what people are saying, to see what we've had through overnight. Obviously, we have people working on different time zones, in different time zones. So there's normally something when you wake up, but obviously more so on deadline day. Like I was saying, you start earlier and you finish somewhere between 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., depending on how busy it is right at the end. And it's decidedly unglamorous, I'd say, particularly for a digital first journalist. None of the stuff where you see somebody at a Finch Farm with a camera, Sky Sports News camera crew there. There's none of that. It's often just get your head down, make calls, send messages, try and find out what's happening, and check various stories with a bit of writing thrown in as well. So it should be interesting. Like I said, I'm pretty glad this is all going to be over soon. and you're more or less at the mercy of the news cycle of what Everton do or don't do. So I imagine your day will be somewhat similar, won't it?
Yeah, I'd say mine's even less glamorous than that. To be honest, obviously I'll be logging on in the morning. I'll be just looking after both of the live blogs to begin with. 7 a.m. I'm starting, so you'll have Liverpool, Boo Hiss, of course, and Everton as well. I think both clubs are probably expecting a relatively busy day, and I think Liverpool have sort of left it a bit later than they would usually in the window, certainly in terms of outgoings this year. And from Everton's perspective, we're hoping someone like Mangala can get over the line, hoping maybe they can get some other players in as well. But I think it's one of those throughout the day, isn't it, where you've just got to be very careful and very aware about what you're putting out there, what you're taking as granted, because as much as Twitter and News Now and other outlets we use quite frequently can be temperamental at times and a little bit untrustworthy. Certainly on deadline day, it's even more so. And just wanted to ask you, really, is it obviously being more on the reporting side of things, is that something that you've experienced when it comes to deadline day before? Like, could you wake up and have a message, for example, off an agent or a representative who is, for want of a better phrase, trying to use you to get something over the line or help their player get a better deal this late in the window? Is that something that frequently happens? Could it happen tomorrow morning where you wake up and you've got a message off agent X trying to help you with player Y?
Yeah, and not just player representatives. It could be anyone. I guess one of the first questions you ask yourself as a journalist is, why am I being told this information? And is there an ulterior motive? I mean, certainly during contract talks, for example, you might question whether a link to another club has been put out there to hurry up the parent club in negotiations. I mean, one of the ways we get around that, and one of the ways we try to prevent inaccuracies is in, for argument's sake, with the Neil Maupay deal to Marseille, we would give both clubs on that deal before printing. We would go to both clubs and give them a right of reply, and that would look something like, we're intending to print this along these lines. Do you have any comment on or off the record that might be used in the story? And sometimes you'll have a piece of information, you go to a club and the club pretty strongly disagrees with that, and then you kind of, your mind's made up. But often, certainly the stuff that you see in print from ourselves, that's gone through probably 2-3 checks, and it's been stood up at various different points along the line there. So with the Neil Maupay one, you'd go to Everton, you'd go to Marseille, you'd probably try and get a sense of what's happening from the player's perspective as well. And that gives you a fuller rounded picture, and it means that you're far less likely when you do that to get something wrong. That's only part of the process, of course, though, because then you've got to actually write the thing. It's got to be edited. Pictures have got to be put on it. I guess that's probably more your job, Matt, putting pictures on it, writing the headline if you're an editor. Writers don't really do that. And that process can take kind of an hour, up to an hour, I'd say, when you put it all in. So sometimes when you might not necessarily be the first to put something out, but you might have been working on it all morning. And that gets slightly frustrating. But I always think that this job is so much about reputation and so much about being right and being accurate and being seen to be those things, that you'd rather be second and know you're spot on than first and wrong. And unfortunately, I think in the industry, there's an awful lot of first and wrong at this moment in time. And you mentioned going on News Now there. I will still look at that more or less daily just to see what others are writing. It's a very easy way of doing that. But I can guarantee you tomorrow that if there's 100 links to players on that page tomorrow from an Everton perspective, over half of them will be complete nonsense. Another 10 to 20%, maybe even 30% might have had a grain of truth at some point, or they might have been somewhere on a list but aren't going to happen. And then there's a few more that are legit but still might not happen as well. And that's just the nature of the beast. It's a constant churn of stories 24/7. And I suppose you distinguish yourselves by making very thorough checks and being right in your information. So there's a whole process there going behind the scenes of this. There's a whole process there to get to the finished article on the website.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why, like, certainly now, like it does become so difficult because, like, I wouldn't, like, I'm sure, like, you know, I'm sure your editors, or certainly not, myself as an editor, don't put that kind of pressure on. But I imagine as a writer, when you see those sorts of things go out, where it can just be a tweet, it can just be a link back to something, that you might just feel a pressure yourself to, I've got to get this out now, I've got to get this done. I want to be, because as much as what you said there about, it's, you'd rather be second and be right than first and wrong. As a reporter, you want to be first still. You want to be the person to be seen to breaking that story. So that in itself, I imagine, is quite a hard balancing act to kind of strike.
Yeah, and it can be quite fraught at times as well. Like, you constantly wondering if this is going to appear somewhere else, or if you've been kind of spun a yarn by somebody, you've been told a tale that might not necessarily be completely true. So it can get quite stressful at times.
Has that ever happened to you, do you think? I mean, are you willing to be honest, has that ever happened? Have you ever learned a lesson from something like that happening?
I think over time, you get a sense of who you can and can't trust, and who's more likely to be reliable and who's not. And that judgment, 99 times out of 100, pays off for you. I think with the checks and balances are in place, it would be very hard for us to. We're not going to report on a single source and whatever else. And if somebody is known to be a bit less accurate or reliable with their information, then we'll check that even further. That's just the way it goes. What I would say is that, I mean, I report very little of what I'm actually told. That shows you how much you have to filter through, and sometimes it's conjecture, but sometimes somebody might have heard something from somebody else, and there's a bit of Chinese whispers, and there you probably just have to go straight to source and cut out all the middlemen, and that's how you wade through the information there. It's also why you see a lot of incorrect information, because often people are basically reporting verbatim what they're told immediately. And like I say, we can't and don't and wouldn't do that. So it happens quite often. And like I say, I would probably report less than 20% of what I'm actually told. Take at face value. You have to be careful. The question you always go back to is, why am I being told this information, and how reliable is this person?
It's quite comforting to know that, like, your WhatsApp groups, Everton related, probably very similar to every other Evertonian up and down the country, of like hearsay and speculation. And I've just spotted Riquelme at West Derby, cash point, and all those old yarns. But we'll move on now anyway, because I'm sure people are sick of us navel gazing when it comes to journalism. Like I said, people probably don't have much sympathy for us anyway. And our long day tomorrow. But just to finish off, mate, very quickly, like I said, we are recording this on Thursday night. Sean Dyche did his press conference today, and I thought he was actually uncharacteristically quite candid about transfers earlier in the week. When he was asked about Mangala, he sort of gave it a straight bat and sort of said, "Are we?" And did his classic Dyche tone to answering that. When he was asked about it today, he said he's on his way, and it looks like they've got a medical booked for him, and it looks like the deal's going to be done. Lopez, you mentioned earlier, has gone, and he's gone kicking and screaming on social media, as we probably all expected. So those two look like they're pretty much over the line in terms of an incoming and an outgoing, respectively. As far as you're concerned, what else are you expecting from the Blues tomorrow?
Yeah, so just a very quick point on those. I think you touched on a good point there, in that Dyche does not usually comment unless something is pretty close. So I think that gives you a sense that although he was cautious, and although all the usual caveats apply, he and the club probably expect both of those things to go through now at this stage. That would be Everton's, if Mangala comes in on loan, that would be Everton's 7th summer signing, albeit another loan signing. And I still think they'll cast their eye at what's going on in the market, what options are available there are a number of positions where I still think ideally, if they could have done business, they would have. So, I mean, winger, fullback of some kind, some form of cover there. And it's just whether the right opportunity presents on the right terms for Everton. I mean, there are lots of players that they like. I mean, for example, I've seen links over the last few days to the Lyon winger Ernest Nuama. He is a player, as I understand it, that they do like, but is he going to be available on the terms they want? I suppose that's a pretty open question. And the question
So 30 million euros asking price, and you just immediately think, no, like it'd have to be something different, wouldn't it?
Well, if that were to happen, and I think it is unlikely, if that were to happen, then I think that let's say for argument's sake it was a 20 million euros fee, Everton probably wouldn't be paying more than 3, 4, 5 million up front, based on recent precedent and what we know of their financial situation right now. So anything where there's a big lump sum of money involved is pretty much a no-go right now. I think the only thing that might change this, and we did speak about it a little bit in the podcast earlier in the week, is the situation with Calvert-Lewin. I suppose that's the one where if something were to happen late on, Everton would almost certainly have to respond, at least try to respond, because you're losing your frontline striker right at the end of the window. It's been a bit of an odd summer for Calvert-Lewin because obviously he was very close to joining Newcastle. And I think they probably expected interest at a certain level for him as something of a Premier League proven striker. And up to now, it hasn't really materialised. There's been bits of interest here and there, kind of very tentative interest. But I don't think anything's beyond Newcastle has really come to the forefront and made Everton think. And we're now around 24 hours away from the end of all of this now, and that offer still hasn't materialised again. So you started out whether it ever will. And that will put both the player and the club in a very interesting position for the rest of the season, wouldn't it? If something were to change dramatically, and I think it would be a dramatic change at this moment in time, then, like I say, they'd probably have to respond. But time is running out, and I get the sense that Everton have done the bulk of their business. That they probably will do Mangala, and that looks likely. They probably will have a look at what else is out there, but there's not a huge amount of resource left unless something dramatic happens. I suppose you run the risk of being a little bit short for the remainder of the season, but that's the financial predicament, isn't it?
Yeah, and just finally, the Trippier stuff seems to have faded away quite fast, doesn't it? I think obviously initially when he was linked, people put one and one together. Him and Dyche, obviously the great relationship they've got, and thought it's one that could happen, but it seems to have maybe transpired that he will not be totally keen on Everton. Newcastle want to keep him. There's just a few obstacles that have kind of come up to stop it from happening.
Yeah, and the same obstacles, in fairness, that we spoke about on previous pods, with Newcastle actually being quite strapped at the back at the moment. He's had his place taken in the side by Tino Livramento, but it's a long season, and I'm sure he'll get game time there if he stays. So I don't think that he may have wanted out, but I'm not sure how much he was going to push. And certainly Eddie Howe, the noises from Eddie Howe were that they wanted to keep him ideally. Let's see what happens over the next 24 hours. Obviously, these things can turn quickly, but his wages are also very high, I think, as well, and that would be another difficult obstacle for Everton. And then just going through outgoings, I mean, obviously we've got the Neil Maupay situation, which is ongoing at the time of recording. A young under-21 midfielder, Khalid Jankpata, is currently in Italy and likely to sign for Serie B side Spezia. Everton will get a transfer fee. There'll be add-ons, and I think there's a sell on there as well. So that's some form of money coming into the club again, and I think the terms are quite good for Everton from what I've been told. A couple of the young players might go out on loan. I think you're looking at the goalkeeping situation. I think you're looking at a couple of the young strikers. potentially if they can find a decent loan before the end of the window. And then, of course, you've got the situation of Mason Holgate, and everybody knows Mason Holgate's available, but it's whether somebody comes in and kind of strikes a deal on the terms Everton would want. And that's tough after 2 failed loan moves last season. That's tough. 2 very difficult loan moves last season. It's tough.
With Valencia today. That would be Godfrey at Atalanta and Holgate at Valencia. That'd be some moves for them too.
Well, I've seen Mason Holgate linked with Ajax and Valencia in recent days, and it started to question off the back of that. Started to question my perception on reality and on the player. I suppose in light of that, I think you're probably in all likelihood you're probably looking for something a lot more local than that, aren't you? But the issue, certainly if you look at championship clubs, is that you've got a player on very healthy Premier League wages, as far as I understand it. Everton normally want a wage contribution or total wage coverage, and that's before you even get into a potential for a loan fee. So it's difficult. It's not impossible. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. And with their injury situation at the moment, do they just get to the point where they go, and we know players are coming back, but there's no point in giving this lad away if he's contracted for a further year.
Yeah.
That's going to be a decision Everton will have to make over the next 24 hours. So I think it'll be interesting. I think there'll be plenty of intrigue right up until the end. I'm pretty sure I will still, whatever happens, I will still have to be making checks at 11 o'clock at night to see if, for some bizarre reason, a deal sheet's gone in or whatever else. But I think we can consider that the bulk of Everton's, most, potentially even all after Mangala, of Everton's business is done. And yeah, they'll have a look and see what they can do elsewhere. But finances will dictate whether those deals are achievable or not.
Yeah, I saw the Broya to Ipswich deal collapse completely today. I was thinking Kevin Felwell's going to want to press that button. He's going to want that lad through the door. But we might have to wait a bit longer.
Just because of that news, there'll be a 2+2 story over the next day or so, which says Dominic Calvert-Lewin's going to end up at Chelsea with Armando Broya ending up at Everton. And yes, of course, at various points, and even now, Everton have liked and do like Armando Broya. Yes, at various points, Calvert-Lewin has been linked to Chelsea. But there's an awful lot that would have to happen to get there. That story's going to appear. You'll see it on news now tomorrow morning, Matt.
We'll be linked with the lads from Southampton as well, 100%. Suleiman, the winger. We're linked to him in every single window. So I'm expecting us to be linked with him at some point as well. But yeah, be careful out there, folks. I think, as Rob Rear always says, when it comes to this time of year, sage advice for the final day of the transfer window. But yeah, we will wrap it up there. Cheers to Paddy. I hope you enjoyed that. Let us know what you think of it. If you want to hear more about the journalistic side of things, let us know. If you want to hear less, you want to hear us talking more about the football, do tell us as well. But that was just a one-off insight into deadline day. If you watch us on YouTube, do leave a comment, do hit subscribe. As you always say, is under Paddy's left shoulder as you're watching. And do like the content as well. It all helps. And if you listen to us on iTunes or Spotify or anywhere else, do leave us a rating, do leave us a review. All these things help. And yeah, thanks for everyone's continued great feedback about this show. We'll be back on Tuesday morning with the next Everton Byline. Over the weekend, we'll have instant reaction from the Derby Castles at Everton against Bournemouth in the Premier League. But we'll wrap it up there. Up the toffees, enjoy deadline day, and we'll speak to you again very soon.